The REDMAGIC 7 is the latest gaming phone from Nubia, which packs the spec sheet with the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, up to 8GB of RAM, 250GB of UFS 3.1 storage with no option for expandable memory, so get the storage option that you're going to need. A 165Hz AMOLED display with 720Hz touch sampling, and a 4500 mAh battery with fast wired charging via the included 65-watt charger. With prices ranging from $629 to $799, is this the fastest phone on the market? Let's check it out. How's it, Grant here, and welcome back to the channel. This is my first look and walkthrough of the REDMAGIC 7, which I've been using for a few weeks now. And before going any further, a big thanks to Nubia for sending this over for me to check out and review. So first, we'll check out the hardware. This is the case that comes included with the phone, which is actually a really nice case. Usually these cases are an afterthought, and they're usually really cheap plastic cases, but this is a really nice case. You can see it actually has a nice design to fit the back of the REDMAGIC. You also have deep corner protection on all the edges, so you're gonna get good protection out of this. And of course, you're gonna have all the cutouts for the gaming control there, your vents, your power volume rockers, and of course your ports at the bottom, Type-C port and all that. So really nice, and of course openings for the shoulder triggers here, capacitive triggers. But really nice case for a free case, because you're gonna really need one. There's probably not a lot of aftermarket cases for this, and so it's nice that they actually give you a pretty good case in the box. And just wipe down the screen a bit, you're going to see that it actually comes with a pre-installed screen protector. So it's not just a plastic one. This really feels like a glass one, so a pretty decent screen protector as well. So you're going to need those accessories because, like I said, probably not a lot of aftermarket accessories for this. But this is the Supernova version, which is the kind of transparent back to it, so kind of a fake transparent back, trying to show you inside the device. Of course, that's not really where everything is. It's kind of like decals, so you can see their Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 there. And then, of course, you're going to have things around like RPM. So this is like your fan right here. So this is the LED fan describing the specs on the fan. And then of course it has 64 megapixel camera, and you got your Nubia branding and stuff. But again, Supernova is what they're calling this transparent version. And I think it's the nicest version of the three. There's also an Obsidian and a Pulsar. And so of course, like we covered it on the bottom, you're going to see one of your stereo speakers. You're also going to have the Type-C port microphone and a dual SIM slot. So you're going to have dual SIMs here. Again, no expandable memory, so make sure you get the memory configuration that you're really going to need. And then on the right hand side, you're going to have your power button, one of the three vents, the microphone right here, and you're going to have your capacitive shoulder triggers right there on either side. And so like I said, one of three vents. You have a vent there, a vent on the back, and a vent on the left side, where you're also going to have your switch to activate game space. So if you want to go straight into gaming, there's an actual physical switch to do that, which is really nice. You can see it's got some tactile feel to it. Really nice switch there. And then of course you've got your volume buttons as well. Up top, you've got a 3.5mm headphone jack, and this does support DTS sound. And you've got another microphone and a really flat top matte aluminum chassis on that. So it looks really nice to complement this overall transparent version here. So really nice accents on this thing. And of course, it's a really flashy design being a gaming phone. And this does have NFC on board, so it does support tap to pay. You don't have an official IP rating because you've got holes in it with the cooling vents. And then there is no wireless charging. But of course, there is that triple camera array on the back. Like I said, main 64 megapixel camera. It is the Samsung GW3 sensor, so it does not have optical image stabilization built in, which is pretty common in kind of gaming-centric phones. Cameras are usually an afterthought, but these aren't actually bad. I'll show you some samples a little bit later. And that's the same main sensor used in previous REDMAGIC phones. It's also in the Xiaomi 11 Lite and the Black Shark 4 series. It also has an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera and a 2 megapixel macro camera. So pretty basic triple camera setup, but again, they produce better results than you think. Like I said, I'll show you that a bit later. And as far as biometrics, it does have a face unlock and a built-in in-display fingerprint scanner. So if you just activate the display, you can see how fast face unlock is. It almost looks like there's no security at all. So some of the fastest face unlock here. And you got the in-display fingerprint reader. So if you tap on it, it works. It's been pretty reliable for me. I haven't had too many problems. You just tap on it and see, it won't really activate there. You're gonna wanna hold it a little bit longer, but it does work pretty much all the time. I haven't really had too much of a problem with biometrics. And so as far as the display, of course, on a gaming phone, you're gonna want a very big display. And this is a very big phone because this is a 6.8-inch AMOLED display. And like I said earlier, the range is 120 Hertz. This has a 165 Hertz refresh rate display, and it has options to dumb down that refresh rate. I'll show you later. And it does have a 720 Hertz touch sampling rate, which is going to be key for all you gamers out there. And then, like I said, Full HD Plus, so it's not a Quad HD display. This is 1080 by 2400 resolution, and it is a 20:9 aspect ratio. So the key thing though, it is a flat display, uninterrupted display, so you're not gonna see any kind of punch holes for the camera. You can see up there the camera is above the display in that slight bezel up top. That's why there's that bezel there with a fairly symmetrical bezel on the bottom. And it has a max 700 nits of brightness, so it's not going to be the brightest display outdoors, but it is more than visible outdoors. It's not as tough to see as you would think in direct sunlight. Usually you're going to want about 1,000 nits or brighter to be really safe in doing this in direct sunlight outdoors, but this panel I found is actually pretty good, like I've been showing here on the screen. Now, this is how it's going to look out of the box. These are screenshots, but this is exactly how it comes configured out of the box. You can see it does have a bunch of fancy widgets there for heart rate. You can see your game time that you've been playing. They have a widget for the fan, this actual LED fan in the back. I'll show you that a bit later. And then so this is the other page with some of the different pre-installed apps. There is some bloatware on it. And it does come running Android 12 with a January security patch. And since I've had this, I've had 2 software updates come in. It is still on the January security patch. Let me see if I can kind of show you that here. But if we go into About Phone, we can see here it is running January security patch still and Android 12 even after a couple of updates. But those updates have fixed some things. I'll get into that a little bit later as well. But it seems like Nubia is updating this device. And if you actually go into display and if you can go into refresh rate, you have options for 165 Hertz like it shows right there. Let me actually turn down the brightness a little bit. It's a bit too bright maybe. So again, you have options to go full 165 Hertz, but that's going to eat up a lot of battery. And so you can dumb it down to 120, which is kind of the max refresh rate on a lot of popular phones nowadays. But you can turn it down to 90 Hertz or even as low as 60 Hertz if you want to conserve battery. And so the other thing that it does support, which I think is important on a gaming phone, is going to be this low brightness flash protection, which is basically DC dimming, which means, you know, some phones you're going to see at low brightness, it'll flicker. So if I turn that off, you'll see the lines on the screen right now. So it's constantly refreshing. And at lower brightness, you're going to really be able to see these lines when you have light shining on it. So if you're trying to play a game, you're probably going to have light coming down. You want to see the display and you're going to have some of this kind of flickering. Turn that on and you can see the flickering goes away or it slows down. So if I turn down the brightness even further, you'll probably see it still refreshing a little bit, but not as frequently as with it off. So DC dimming is what that is. And it's a very key thing, I think, on a gaming phone. Of course, if you push it up brighter, you're not even going to see any flickering at all. So if you see that on your phone at lower brightness, especially at night when you might be gaming or using the phone, turn that option on and most of the flickering should probably just go away. And one more thing about the display here, it has an always on display, so you don't have an LED notification, but most phones don't come with that anymore. They're going with always on displays, and you've got a bunch of options for your always on display, from different clocks to graphics. You can even go into some custom options. You can put a video on it, a GIF, your own custom image, or some text that you want to display on your always on display. So nice customization options here for your always on display. And so as far as software, like I said before, it is running Android 12 with the January security patch. It's running REDMAGIC OS version 5 on top of that as a skin. And you can see here I've changed up the home screen. This is one of the custom wallpapers that it has. So if you go into here, you can see the different wallpapers that come preloaded on here. So we can actually pull some of them up, I guess, so you can kind of see what it looks like here. So probably target at some gamers if you like anime, but these are some pretty cool stock wallpapers here that you can kind of switch things up into. So, and you can get into more wallpapers there if you want to check it out. But I've got it on some of these dynamic ones. So if you go into here, I believe I had it on this one. So if we apply that, we can put it on both. You can see here when you go into the home screen, there's some animation going on there. So a bit of a live wallpaper. So some pretty cool built-in wallpapers that I just want to show you really quick there. As far as performance, like I said before, it has the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, and everything runs nice and smooth as you would expect. It's got the latest cooling technology in here because, like everyone's kind of pointed out, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 runs pretty hot and it's been throttling on some devices because of that. And so that's why they have 3 heat vents to help dissipate the heat combined with that cooling fan to expel any heat that builds up in there. It's also got a heatsink and some copper coil, so really got some built-in passive cooling as well as some active cooling with the fan and the vents to help expel that heat. And so as far as performance, it's been really great, but I've run 3D Mark, and this is the extreme stress test. So this is the 20-minute test that loops over and over for 20 minutes to kind of give you a feel for gaming or any kind of extreme performance over a 20-minute period of time. And so you can see it activated the cooling fan. So the LED fans there, you might hear the fan itself actually as well because it thinks it's gaming. You can actually go into the settings to disable the auto turning on of the fan if you don't want that to auto turn on all the time. So going back and looking at the actual test results, you'll see stability was over 90%, which is really impressive for the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 because other phones running the same test like the base Galaxy S22, stability was at about 60%. And even the S22 Ultra, when I tested, it was around 70-ish%. So 90% stability over that period of time is really good. So this really doesn't seem to be throttling the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. So the passive and active cooling seem to be doing a very good job of reining in and controlling the heat that's being generated by that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. You'll see how it performed over time. You can see how it scored over the loops, but temperature did rise from 30 degrees Celsius to 52 degrees Celsius. So it did get hot, but that just means the passive and active cooling was working to keep everything running smooth. You can see the frame rates there over time as well, but just wanted to show you what you can expect with extended period of use, especially if you want to go into extended gaming sessions, which you probably will if you're buying this phone. So Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 seems to perform very good, and in just my own gaming sessions over time, it's performed very well. I haven't had any kind of throttling or any lockups or anything like that. All right, and speaking of gaming, like I said before, you have this physical red switch on the side that when you actually flip it on, it'll activate game space. So this will basically your game launcher where you can activate and go ahead and start playing any games. And so if you just tap on something like Genshin Impact, it'll launch the game. And when the game launches, it is by default set up to auto turn on that fan. Again, you can go into settings and disable that auto start if you want to, but it is a nice feature to start automatically while you're gaming. And if you swipe in from the left or right from the sides, it activates this game space. They fixed this in some updates because you used to have to swipe in twice. Now you just swipe in once, it comes in. You can see right here, it controls your performance settings. So if you go to balance, you swipe back in, you can see it lowers the GPU speeds and the CPU speeds. We go to rise performance, which is your max performance, you'll see it crank everything up. So that's how you can enable and disable your different performance modes. You can also switch your refresh rates straight from here if you want to. So if you're at 90 Hertz to save battery, when you come into your game, you can just tap on that and quickly go into 165 Hertz for your gaming. You can disable or enable the fan, so you can hear it just cut off there. So fan's off, you probably don't hear it anymore. Or you can turn it back on when you want it and need it, so you don't always have to have it on as a distraction for gaming. You can just turn it on when you feel it getting too hot. And you have quick toggles for a bunch of other things, so you can do a screen record if you want to capture the moments in your game. You can also do things like control your messages. So barrage message, if you activate that, it'll mute your messages or notifications from coming in. And you've got other things around here like blocking calls as well. So a bunch of quick toggles here to control your volume as well as your brightness. So a lot of nice quick toggles here in game space. And of course, like I said before, one of the features of this phone are the capacitive shoulder triggers up top on the left and right. And so to map those, you just go into your game center here, hit the shoulder triggers, and then you'll see the left and the right here, so you can actually move these physically around on the screen to wherever your on-display triggers are or your on-display controls are, and it'll control whichever of the left or right triggers that you want. So I mapped this here to Genshin Impact, and so if I just tap on this, you'll see it activating that left trigger to attack and the right trigger here on the bottom for that control. So that's how you quickly map the shoulder triggers to any game you're playing here. And you can save these as presets for any of the games for your mapping. So if you swipe up into here, you can see you can save them as some different configurations for the different games you play. And really quickly here, like I was saying before, you can configure the cooling fan. So if you just go into the fan settings, you can actually turn that off if you don't want it to automatically come on. So you can turn it physically on, or you can change when it automatically comes on down here. Now let's talk about the audio and sound options on the phone because it's important, especially for a gaming phone. So like I said before, you have dual speakers, one at the bottom, one in the earpiece. You have a 3.5mm headphone jack there that does support DTS sound. And if you go into your sound options, you'll notice here at the bottom it says sound effect. That's grayed out, and it'll say it'll only become enabled when you plug in some headphones. So if you get some wired headphones, plug that in, you'll see now you have the sound effect options enabled. Tap into that. This is where you can access your DTS sound. You can disable that if you don't want. And you've got presets for music, movie, and games. And so I've tested these out, and so basically music is kind of heavy on the bass. Movies will cut down on the low end with some emphasis on the vocals. And if you turn on gaming mode, then it basically further cuts down on the low end, which kind of makes sense if you think about it for the presets. And so let's do a quick speaker test so you can kind of hear how they sound. Let's play something here, and let's crank up the volume. Let's go ahead and pick another beat here, something a little bit different from that one. So there you go. So pretty loud speakers, which is important, I think, on a gaming phone, because you may not always want to plug in. Maybe you're in a quiet room by yourself and you want to just listen to the speakers while you game. Really loud. They get really nice and loud. They have some kick at the bottom to it. They're not overly tinny. So they're better than average speakers here, and they definitely get more than loud enough. All right, so moving on to talking about the battery here. So it has a fairly large 4,500 milliamp hour capacity battery. It comes with a 65 watt charger in the box. And so it comes with this red charging cable. And if you plug it in, you'll actually start to see the charging animation right there, max charge it says. And you can see it actually charging right in front of you. And by default, it's gonna activate that cooling fan so it doesn't overheat the battery. So when you're charging this fast, the battery tends to get hot, activates the cooling fan to dissipate that heat, which is pretty nice. And so we'll watch it charge right in front of us. You can see it's already gone up to 1%, 59. And so talking about the battery life, it's going to really depend upon how you're using it, how much you're using it to game, how long you're using it to game, all these things. But for me, when I had it at full 165 hertz refresh rate, the battery lasted me a full day, but I only got 4 hours of screen on time out of it. So of course I was gaming on the gaming phone. I was doing a bunch of other things, but only got 4 hours at full high refresh rate. Another day I put it at 120 hertz. I still got a full day, but I managed 6 hours of screen on time out of it. So it just depends on how I was using my phone. And then at 90 hertz, you know, again, I think I was using it a lot harder. So it only went maybe about half a day, but I got 7 hours of screen on time out of it. So it just depends on how you're using the phone. Refresh rate plays a part in it, but it just, again, like I said, depends on what you're doing. So changing refresh rate, I got a bit more screen on time, 2 hours of more screen on time at 120 hertz. 90 hertz, I kind of use the phone a lot, so I couldn't really gauge that, but I imagine you get another 1 to 2 hours if you dumbed it all the way down to 90 or even 60 hertz. So again, just going to depend on how you use it. That's how, you know, my results came out based off of my usage. And as you can see here, it's already charged up to 62%. I think we started at about 57 or 58. So pretty fast charging here. And they claim that it goes 0 to 100 in about 30 minutes. And that's been pretty much true. I've tested it. It does charge in 30 minutes. And some people don't like fast charging because they think it overheats the phone. Nice thing they have a fan. I charge overnight, so I don't need fast charging. But I think once you go to this fast charging, you're not going to want to go back. I no longer charge overnight on my fast charging phones. I can just plug them in to get a quick top up or fully charge them while I'm getting ready or just doing some other things. It charges in, some charge in 15 minutes. This one will charge in half an hour. So really like that fast charging feature here. And one other nice feature about the battery here is if you're gaming, you can go into that game space again. And then with your quick toggles, you see one thing called charge separation. So if you activate that, it'll tell you that it's basically going to act as a pass-through. So it's not going to charge the battery with this on. It's just going to feed power into the phone. And the benefit of that is by not charging the battery while you're gaming, it doesn't overheat the battery, causing more heat to the overall phone and degrading your performance. So when you're gaming, especially if you're going for longer gaming sessions and you're going to want to make sure that you always have power, I would turn this on. And so that it stops charging the battery. It won't overheat your phone because of that, but you still get more than all the power you're going to need while you're gaming. All right, so now let's talk about the cameras, and maybe that's not the most important thing in a gaming phone for you. You just want raw performance, but it is nice to have a capable set of cameras. So this has a 64 megapixel main camera, like I said, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro. The front camera up above the display right there, you can see there, so there's no punch hole, is an 8 megapixel front selfie shooter. And then you can shoot up to 8K video on the rear and 1080p 30 frames per second video on the front. And so if you go actually into the camera app, it's pretty decent. If we launch this, you have all your basic features. So you have photo, video, you do get a pro mode here, and you do get pro mode for video if you tap there. So you get pro video controls as well on a gaming phone, which is pretty nice. And you have your standard features like night mode, portrait mode. So some pretty decent features here on the phone. For the camera app. And as far as the photos and the camera performance itself, photos actually look quite good and they retain some pretty nice detail and sharpness. So it actually looks a lot better than you would think for a quote-unquote gaming phone. The colors are pretty true to life, pretty natural. Portrait mode is actually also pretty nice with some fairly good edge detection, which is pretty surprising. And in low light, because it does not have optical image stabilization, it really shows. It's dark, so it's okay, but it's not that great. Night mode is actually better than expected and can definitely help in low light situations. Video performance is okay, nothing to go crazy about, but it's actually not too bad. And you're not going to expect really great video performance, but you can see here from the samples what they look like and judge for yourself. And then the ultra wide angle camera has a fairly wide 120-degree field of view. It looks okay, it's not the sharpest, but it definitely gets the job done. And then selfies out of the front-facing shooter, they're okay, about as good as can be expected. Portrait mode doesn't really produce much subject separation or background blur, if any. And there was a bug in the front-facing camera where you would use it, you would switch to portrait mode, and it would crash the camera app. And so with these last couple of updates, I noticed that's been fixed. So if now I go into the front-facing camera right there, I go into portrait mode, it won't crash the camera. So it's good to see that they're fixing bugs like this. Really key, because that was kind of annoying. I know you may not always use your phone for cameras, but it's good that they're fixing bugs. So now let's touch on connectivity. I'll talk about my experience using it here on Mint Mobile in the US, which runs on T-Mobile's network. But first off, on Wi-Fi, it supports the latest Wi-Fi 6E. So if you got a Wi-Fi 6E router, you're gonna get the fastest Wi-Fi speeds. I'm using Wi-Fi 6, so I get the speeds that I get on any other device, which is 300 to 400 or 500 megabits per second down, 40 megabits per second up. So Wi-Fi speeds are on par with any other device that I've got. Now, as far as data speeds, again, like I said, I'm on Mint Mobile, which uses T-Mobile towers. And so I do get 5G via band 41. And so it hasn't always been as fast as other phones that are meant for the US, where I can connect to the ultra capacity network, where I get 200 to 300 megabits per second down. It did manage to connect up to one of the UC towers, and it did get that speed. So I'll show you my results. Before that, it was typically getting, even on 5G that it says there, it was getting maybe 20 to 30 megabits per second down. The upload speeds were good, but it finally connected to a UC tower, I guess, because you can see right there, 316 megabits per second down, 35 up. So it can connect to T-Mobile's UC network. It's just going to depend on which tower, but it wasn't connecting consistently to it, but I did manage to get it that one time, so it can do it. All this is going to depend upon, of course, your wireless carrier and your location and all of that stuff. But this is my personal experience, again, on T-Mobile here in my part of Northern California here in the US. So there you go. That's my review of the Nubia REDMAGIC 7 gaming phone. This is definitely the fastest phone that I personally tested running the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. It doesn't slow down, doesn't throttle. Anything you throw at it, that passive and active cooling system is not a gimmick. It definitely works. It keeps the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 running as cool as possible and efficiently as possible. So if you just want pure raw performance, this is definitely the phone to get. So overall, I'm definitely pleased with my time with the REDMAGIC 7. Again, for photographers, it's not gonna be the best, and it's not gonna be the best. It's meant for gaming, and for that, it is fantastic. So if you wanna pick this up as a gaming phone, I highly recommend it. And if you already have a REDMAGIC 7, let me know in the comments how you're liking that. And of course, if you have any questions about it, I'll try to answer what I can if you leave them as a comment as well. And as always, thanks for watching.